Welcome to the Science of Hockey, the podcast where we break down the science behind ice hockey. I'm the analyst, your host, and every week we explore the data, research, and evidence that shape how we play, train, and understand the game of hockey. From biomechanics to performance psychology, we take you beyond the rink and into the research lab, giving you insights that go beyond hearsay and into what really makes the difference on the ice. Whether you're a player, a coach, a parent, or just someone passionate about the sport, we're here to bring you scientifically backed information in a language that's friendly and easy to understand. So grab your skates and let's dive into the science of hockey. Hello, hockey fans, and welcome back to the Science of Hockey. I'm the analyst, and today we're exploring what makes a young hockey player stand out and make it to the NHL. In this episode, we'll discuss how biological maturation influences a player's chances of being selected at the junior level and ultimately making it to the NHL. We'll explore the impact of early and late physical development on long-term success. We'll break down why early maturing players may have an advantage in junior selection, but late maturing players often thrive when it comes to reaching the highest levels of hockey. If you're a coach, parent, or young player yourself, this episode is a must-listen to understand how timing of physical growth impacts hockey careers. So, lace up your skates and let's get into the science behind reaching the NHL.
All right, let's get ready to hit the ice, folks. Today, we're going deep, like really deep into the world of elite hockey.
Sounds exciting.
It is, trust me. We're diving into a 20-year study of Swedish hockey players.
Wow, 20 years.
Yeah, and they uncovered some really surprising findings about who makes it to the NHL. We're not just talking about what they discovered, but also like why those results came about.
I'm intrigued already. You know, it's funny how much we think we know about talent.
Yeah.
Like we have all these preconceived notions. This study, though, kind of turns a lot of that conventional wisdom on its head, especially when it comes to a sport as demanding as ice hockey.
Absolutely. It makes you question a lot of assumptions, right?
Totally.
Before we get into the specifics of this particular study, maybe we should talk about just what it takes to succeed in hockey, the demands of the sport.
For sure. I mean, hockey, it's not a walk in the park, is it?
Definitely not.
You need a whole mix of things: strength, speed, endurance. And if you look at how the NHL has evolved, players today, they're just bigger and stronger than like a few decades ago.
It's become such a power sport.
It really has.
So naturally, you might think, okay, size and strength, those are key, especially for young players trying to make it.
Makes sense, right?
Right. But this is where things get really interesting because we have to factor in this concept of biological maturation, you know, how we all physically develop at different rates.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's crucial.
Some teenagers, they just get a head start, right?
They do.
They mature faster. Boom, suddenly they're bigger, stronger, more coordinated than all their peers. We often call these the early bloomers.
Yeah, the ones everyone thinks are destined for greatness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that can really change how we see young players and evaluate their potential.
Oh, absolutely.
Just because a player is, dominating at 15 doesn't automatically mean they'll be a star at 25.
Not at all.
Because that early dominance, it might just be a result of them being, physically more mature. This is actually what makes this Swedish study so fascinating.
Okay, I see where this is going.
They didn't just look at a single season or anything. They tracked these players for 20 years.
20 years. That's a long time.
Following their paths from, high school hockey programs all the way, potentially, to the NHL.
Wow. So a 20-year data set.
Yeah, it's incredible. What did they actually learn? Did those, early bloomers, the ones everyone had their eyes on, did they live up to the hype?
Well, here's where the surprises start. As you might expect, the early bloomers, they were more likely to get selected for that under-16 national team.
So early success?
Yeah, at the junior level, that early physical advantage, it seemed to give them a real boost. But...
there's a but. I knew it.
There is, and it's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
When the researchers looked at who ultimately reached the NHL, they found something totally unexpected.
What was it?
It was the later maturing players. They were actually more likely to make it to that elite level.
Wow, that completely flips the script. It's like the opposite of what we assume about early success. So what could explain that? Why would later bloomers have an advantage down the line?
Well, there are a few theories, and they kind of revolve around the unique challenges, the different developmental paths of these later bloomers. Just think about it for a second. Those players, the ones who stick with hockey even when they're constantly smaller and weaker than their competition, they probably got something special driving them, like this real grit and determination.
They have to overcome so much more to even stay in the game.
Exactly. And they're constantly facing these like bigger, stronger opponents.
Yeah.
It forces them to hone their skills, their game sense, everything to a much higher degree.
So it's like a constant training ground.
It is. They can't rely on just being bigger or stronger to win, you know? So they have to outsmart, outmaneuver their opponents.
It's about strategy and skill.
It really is. So it's not just about, pure physical ability. These later bloomers, they might actually develop superior mental toughness, work ethic, strategic thinking, all those qualities that you need to make it to the pros.
They've been in a training montage their whole lives.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Facing adversity and developing a level of adaptability that sets them apart in the long run.
This raises a huge question, though.
Oh, yeah.
If early maturation isn't the be-all and end-all of NHL success, how should we be identifying and developing these young players?
Right.
Do we need to look beyond size and strength, especially in those early years?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one we're going to explore more as we continue this deep dive. It really makes you think, about how we go about evaluating young athletes.
In what way?
Well, this whole thing about focusing just on physical attributes, like, are we potentially missing out on some amazing talent, those late bloomers, because they might not be the biggest or strongest right now?
Right. They've got the potential, but they just need a little more time to develop.
Exactly. And then there's the flip side, too. Those early maturers, the ones who were always the stars early on, they might not feel that same push,
To really refine their skills.
Yeah. They kind of coast on those physical gifts, and it could actually backfire later.
Interesting point. It's like they peak too soon, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. So it really highlights how important it is to create a development system that nurtures all kinds of talent, not just the early bloomers.
So how do we do that? How do we level the playing field and let those late bloomers truly shine?
Well, the researchers touched on a few ideas, and one that I thought was really interesting was this concept of biobanding.
Biobanding. I've heard that term before, but I'm not sure I totally understand it. Can you explain it?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, instead of grouping players by their age, like we traditionally do, you group them by their biological maturity.
Okay, so instead of having a team of all 15-year-olds, you might have a team with a mix of 14, 15, and 16-year-olds, depending on how physically mature they are.
Precisely. So imagine you've got these two teams of 15-year-olds, right?
Gotcha.
On one team, they're all grouped by age. So you might have a couple of really physically dominant players, the early bloomers, who kind of skew the whole competition.
Makes sense.
But on the biobanded team, you have a mix. Different levels of physical development, so it creates a much more balanced playing field.
Oh, I see. So instead of pitting a late bloomer against an early bloomer who's way bigger and stronger, they're playing against kids who are at a similar stage of development.
Exactly. It allows those late bloomers to really hone their skills and compete at a higher level.
That makes a lot of sense.
It also lets coaches, tailor their training and their game strategies to match those different developmental stages so they can push those late bloomers without overwhelming them and challenge those early bloomers to develop a wider skill set.
So it benefits everyone.
It really could.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the players themselves either. This idea could have a ripple effect on everything from how we identify talent to coaching approaches to even how parents and fans perceive young athletes.
It's a whole different way of looking at things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It shifts the focus from those short-term gains, who's winning right now, to long-term development, creating an environment where that potential can really flourish, but on its own timeline.
I like that.
It's important to point out, though, this study did have some limitations.
Oh, okay. Like what?
Well, it was a retrospective analysis, meaning they were looking back at data that had already been collected.
Ah, so they couldn't control for all the variables.
Exactly. And the data was all about male Swedish hockey players, specifically. So, we have to be a little careful about applying these findings to, say, women's hockey or to hockey programs in other countries.
Good point. But it does make you wonder, though, could these same patterns apply to other sports or even other fields completely?
Oh, that's a fascinating question.
Are we overlooking late bloomers in business, the arts, academics, just because we're so focused on early promise?
It really makes you think, right? What if we're missing out on all this incredible talent because we're stuck in these traditional ways of thinking about success?
That's kind of mind-blowing.
It is. And the study found, almost 20% more late bloomers made it to the NHL compared to the early bloomers.
Wow. 20%.
Yeah. So if those numbers hold true in other areas, we could be missing out on a lot of untapped potential.
It makes you wonder how many brilliant minds are out there just waiting to be discovered.
Absolutely. And it's not just about overlooking talent either. We might also be discouraging people who don't fit that mold of early success. Like imagine that young musician who keeps getting told they're not good enough because they're not like a prodigy.
Or a budding entrepreneur whose ideas get shut down because they don't take off right away.
Exactly. We could be extinguishing their passion, their potential, before they even have a chance to explore it fully.
That's a sobering thought. So we've talked about biobanding as one potential solution in the world of youth sports. But taking a step back, what are some broader takeaways from this study that we could apply in other fields? Like how can we build systems that nurture all kinds of talent and let potential flourish no matter those early advantages or disadvantages?
Well, I think one key takeaway is the importance of cultivating a growth mindset in ourselves, in our kids, or our colleagues. Instead of labeling someone as, talented or not talented based on their early performance, we need to recognize that potential can unfold in so many different ways and at different speeds.
It's like embracing the journey, not just the destination.
Yes, and recognizing that everyone has their own unique path. But that's a huge mindset shift for a lot of people, especially in a society that thrives on instant gratification and immediate results.
We want to see those results right away. Patience isn't exactly our strong suit.
That's true. But imagine if we could change that. What if we cultivated a culture that embraced lifelong learning and valued perseverance above all else?
Yeah, instead of just focusing on who's winning right now, what if we celebrated the effort, the progress, the journey itself?
Right, the whole process.
That would be a game changer.
It really would.
It's like we're all about those instant results, But what if we shifted our focus to fostering that love of learning?
Yeah.
And really embracing those challenges.
Because that's where the real growth comes from, right?
Exactly. When we step outside those comfort zones, try new things, maybe even stumble a bit along the way.
Those stumbles are important, though.
They are. It's all part of the learning process.
And sometimes it's those people who, maybe didn't have it all figured out right away, those late bloomers.
Yeah.
They end up surprising everyone.
Including themselves, right?
Totally. Because they had to work harder, they had to be more resilient.
Yeah.
And those are the qualities that often lead to, truly remarkable achievements.
It's like they've developed this, inner strength that others might not have.
Exactly. So, this whole conversation about late bloomers, it makes me think a lot about the importance of mentorship.
Oh, that's a good point.
And support systems in general. Those late bloomers who made it to the NHL, they didn't get there alone, right?
No way.
They had coaches, parents, maybe teammates who believed in them, even when they were struggling.
Push them to keep going.
Exactly. And that kind of support can be crucial, especially for people who might be doubting themselves or comparing themselves to others who seem further ahead.
Especially in those early years.
Yeah. It's about creating an environment where it's okay to struggle, make mistakes, take a longer path. And it's about celebrating that effort and progress, not just the final outcome.
I love that. Effort over outcomes.
It's a powerful shift in perspective, for sure.
It really is. And it's relevant for so many areas of life. Parenting, education, building a career.
Absolutely. It's about fostering that sense of curiosity, a love of learning, rather than that fear of failure that so many people have.
Fear can really hold us back.
It can. But when we're not afraid to try new things,
Yeah.
to push those boundaries, that's when we really grow, both individually and as a society.
That's when innovation happens.
Exactly.
This has been a really thought-provoking conversation. It's a great reminder that we all have the potential to, surprise ourselves, achieve amazing things. Sometimes it just takes a little longer, a little more effort, a little more support along the way.
And sometimes that longer winding path, that's where the real magic is.
I like that, the magic of the winding path. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from those, really fascinating findings of that 20-year hockey study to those broader implications for talent development in all aspects of life.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
As we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with this question. How can we, each of us, create more space in our own lives, in our communities, in our workplaces, for those late bloomers to truly thrive?
That's a good one.
How can we challenge those, really ingrained assumptions about what success looks like and create a culture that celebrates a whole range of talents and timelines?
Those are definitely questions worth pondering, because when we create that space, when we let potential unfold in its own unique way and on its own time, we open ourselves up to a whole world of possibilities.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, keep believing in that power of potential, no matter how or when it blooms.
Thanks for tuning in to the Science of Hockey. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share it with your friends, teammates, or anyone who loves hockey as much as you do. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment to let us know what you liked, what you'd like to hear next, or any questions you have. Your feedback helps us make the show even better. Until next time, keep your skates sharp, your mind open, and keep chasing the science behind the game.